Hi, that's my 5-year-old in the background. We are going to Chicago tomorrow. We're going to be on an Amtrak riding to Chicago and then to take subways around and everything, aren't we, Ian? It's going to be exciting.
Yeah. And how we're going to get to places is the subway.
Yeah, how we're going to get to places is the subway. Anyway, wanted to talk real quick about what worship is. Worship is not giving your best to God. It's not. Sometimes we use the word sacrifice in the New Testament to speak of worship, and it's interesting in religious settings. Whenever you hear someone talk about sacrifice, they assume it means it's something that's gotta hurt. You gotta bring something to God, and that's your worship, and it's a sacrifice. And but in the Old Testament, the sacrifice was not of your sweat and toil. I'm actually reacting to a message I heard today. It's not your sweat and toil. And in this case, this dear brother, this is a dear brother, I know him, he was saying, Cain and Abel, Cain was punished because he didn't bring his best. And he was talking about sacrifice and worship. And Cain was punished. Well, he wasn't punished. He was punished because he murdered Abel, but he was in danger of letting sin take over because his offering was of his own toil from the fruit of the ground, which God had cursed, instead of the blood of the offering. So the Old Testament sacrifice meant to bring the blood. Didn't mean you sacrifice something necessarily. Now, there was a sacrifice in all that, because not everything of it was enjoyable, but it was all a picture of our sacrifice, which is Christ. And Christ is a provision from God, and it's the only thing he accepts. So the only thing God accepts from us is that which he has ultimately provided, which is a person, Jesus Christ. And the sacrifices in the Old Testament were, except for the sin offering, there were other aspects of the offering: the burnt offering, the meal offering, the peace offering, the drink offering, right? And all of these, these are all pictures of Christ. And if you get into them, they're all aspects of his one sacrifice. Most of them had a portion for God to eat and a portion for the priests to eat. It was all related to eating, if you can believe that. Now, the burnt offering was entirely for God, but the meal offering and the peace offering and the drink offering signified that there was a portion for the priests. And that signifies a mutual enjoyment. All these things are pictures of Christ. God is the one who provides Christ. And to offer Christ, to offer these sacrifices, there was a portion for the priest to eat, as I said, and then there was a portion for God to enjoy, as I said. The sacrificial system was a picture of a mutual enjoyment of Christ. We enjoy Christ, and God enjoys Christ, and we have fellowship together. And fellowship is a fellow partaking, where we are both focused on enjoying the same thing. So we are brought into harmony with God through these sacrifices, which are not a painful, toilsome offering of our best, but offering what God has supplied and provided. And that is Christ. So in the New Testament, it all becomes very real, where these things were a shadow, but now we have Christ, and he is provided to us, and the way we enjoy him is through the word and through the gospel. And we eat and drink of him as we celebrate his and have a thankful heart because of him being provided for us. And that brings us into harmony and fellowship with God, because his focus is entirely on Christ. Christ is a fragrant offering, and there's a fragrance that ascends to God that he draws near to because he's so satisfied with the sweet aroma that comes from Christ. And Christ is our portion as well. So as we enjoy what God enjoys, we are brought into harmony with him. And that is worship. So worship, I heard a message today at church, and it was all about how you need to give your best, and you need to give your all, and you need to give your heart needs to be in it, and you need to be, you can't just come together and sing songs, and God may not even hear you. He's so fed up with these religious performances kind of thing. He meant well, but this revelation was missing, and it turned into a work sermon. Even though he was trying to say that it's not about you, he made it all about you. Well, that's what any other concept of worship does. If you don't see Christ as your worship, then all you're left with is you and your heart and your sincerity and the depths of your... No, we are not focusing on how sincere we are, how fervent we are, how zealous we are, how much we mean it, and how much we're giving. We get our eyes off of all of that when we come to Jesus Christ. And we come to him and take him by faith, by believing in the good things that he is through the gospel. And as we do that, we are practically being filled with him and clothed with him, so that now, as we present ourselves to God, we are those who are alive from the dead in the resurrection of Christ, clothed with Christ, fragrant with Christ, saturated with Christ, so that God is receiving Christ in us. It's not us that we're bringing to the table. And you can come in to church in the morning and have just yelled at your kids and been completely insincere and feeling irritated that you saw this person or that and in the parking lot and they cut you off or whatever kind of mood you're in. Doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is, do you lay hold of Christ? And once you lay hold of him, you're brought into a different realm where now you're in what God enjoys, and you are what God enjoys. But he doesn't enjoy you directly. He enjoys Christ in you. And that's what God is interested in. God is focused entirely on Christ. I remember someone saying that we will be shocked. The whole universe will be shocked when the veil is pulled back and we see how centrally God is focused on Christ. That he is the preeminent one that has the first and only place. And that we are all accepted as members of him. But God never intended that the universe would ultimately exist apart from Christ. The universe existed, that's the old creation. The old creation was created by God, but it existed independently of him. But in the new creation and in the new heavens and the new earth, God is going to be all in all. And everything will be saturated and filled with him. And there won't be something that exists necessarily independent of him. Now that, some people would start to argue about free will and all that. That's not for that. We have been given a will, and we have pleasure and desire, and he loves us. But he loves us so much that he wants to join himself to us, not so that we would lose ourselves, but that we would be like branches of the vine, where we are still us as God created us, but we've been joined to him, and now we're one. So I still have me, and he still has him, and yet together we are one. And that's how it will be for eternity. And the old me that existed apart from him doesn't exist in his reckoning anymore. That's the old creation, and he's not asking me to clean it up or bring it to him or fill it with more fervency or zeal. He's wanting me to discard it in my reckoning. And the only way I can do that is to just focus my eyes on Christ. We look away to Jesus. It's not that I try to get rid of my old self. It's that I pick up the gospel. And when I pick up the gospel, I'm picking up the person of Christ in the Word. And as I enjoy it, he's transmitted to me as the Spirit. And the Spirit has everything that he accomplished. His killing element of his cross, his death with its effectiveness is brought to bear on my members, so that by the Spirit I'm mortifying the deeds of the flesh. Not because I'm trying to mortify the deeds of the flesh, but because I'm focused on enjoying Christ. And it's like a multivitamin where it's got all these different ingredients in it. I'm just taking one pill, but it's got the killing element of the cross, but it's also got the resurrection power of Christ and his life, and it's got his virtue and his humanity, and it's got the cleansing of his blood, and it's got the repelling power that drives off Satan, and it's got the fragrance and aroma that draws God near to me. Everything is in that vitamin, and that vitamin is taken by just taking the gospel. And everything we do towards God has to be in Christ. So we're always on the receiving end. We are taking Christ, and as we do, we enjoy the reality of our baptism in him. We're in him, clothed with him, saturated with him, filled with him, and being drawn to God through him. So that is worship. Just enjoy Christ. Talk to you later.